So to start, I'm going to pass around this photo of my first mission trip ever to the Philippines when I was 16 years old. So while we're looking at that, how many of you have ever been on a missions trip? So I'm going to talk about the importance of why I think it's so important to go on a missions trip before you graduate high school. So students going before they graduate high school. My first point comes from Acts 13:47. I've made you as a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. So the ends of the earth could be our backyard here, 25 minutes down the road to Minneapolis, or it could be a 24-hour plane ride to get to Thailand, and then 5-hour bus ride to get up into the mountains. Like, two extremes, but both are reaching the ends of the earth. So, simple explanation, we are called to go. Young and old, 40 years old, 60 years old, 12 years old, we're all called to go to set apart intentional time to bring God's word, to bring the good news to people everywhere. Again, whether it's backyard or whether it's on the other side of the world. So my second point is in 1 Timothy 4:12. Don't let people look down on you because you are young, but set the example in conduct of going in love, of loving people, of going and just showing people love, again, backyard or across the world. In faith, believing that God will show up, that Jesus will show up while you're gone, while you're there, believing in the finance part. So setting the example in faith and in purity. So people watch what students do. So if you think about a 30-year-old going to Thailand or a 12-year-old going to Thailand, both are so incredible, but the 12-year-old's going to get way more attention. That's just how it is because it's biblical, because young people set the example in faith, in love, in conduct, in purity. Students set the example. And people will think if they can do it, then so will I. So we spark the interest, we spark the excitement for it. My third point, it opens our eyes to see the world. So when we are young and when we go and we see third world nations, it opens our eyes to see, just to see our little corner of the world, our little corner in America, that's not normal. So in Proverbs 31:8, it says to speak up for people who cannot speak up for themselves. So when we go and we see people that they don't know Jesus and that they can't speak up for themselves because they don't even know that prayer is there, that's when Proverbs 31:8 comes in. We speak up for people that cannot speak up for themselves. So when I was in the Philippines, when I was 16 years old, I saw just the poverty of a third world nation, and that's when that verse came alive. I'm young, but I get to pray for people and speak up for people that can't speak up for themselves. So my fourth point is Jesus becomes real. And when Jesus can become real at such a young age, the rest of our life is just set up for success. So when I was 16, when I was in the Philippines, I stayed at an orphanage, and there was an orphan there that she got a rash all the way down her arm. And to me, it just looked like a normal heat rash. It didn't look like a big deal. But to them, they couldn't risk if that could spread to 90 other kids at the orphanage. So they put her in a tent with it unzipped, so it was totally safe. She had books, she had puzzles in there. But that was the first moment that I really felt God speak to my heart, and I heard him loud as day. If I'm not speaking up for them, and if I'm not praying for them and loving on them, then who is? And Jesus became so real to me in that moment, and my life hasn't been the same since. So God becomes real to people when we set apart intentional time of serving the Lord and serving others. So I'm going to go over a couple counter arguments of reasons why maybe people say students shouldn't go. So the first reason is money. Money will always be an issue. Money is always, not always, but a lot of times feels like a burden. But again, when we set apart intentional time to go and to serve God and to serve others, God will show up. He is faithful, and he will show up every single time. Some practical things, people give to students. When you ask, people will give because, again, we're setting the example. They're excited to have students go. They're excited at the potential of what can come from it. So people will give. When I went, I did a lot of chores for my family, for family friends, for grandparents, for aunts and uncles, and gave all of that money to my trips. Another thing was I wrote handwritten letters and sent them in the mail to people because it makes it more personal. People will want to give. A second counter argument is short-term versus long-term trips. The missions pastor at my church says that a movement is started when people come back from any trip, long or short. They are fired up and people will feed off of that and it will spiderweb out of control. So when I came back when I was 16, I came back feeling so excited, feeling so passionate, feeling on fire for loving people, on fire for loving God. And that spiderwebbed to different people in my school, to different people in my youth group. And I believe that when that happens, and if 10 students go, then what is that youth group going to look like? It's not going to look the same. So that's my argument for short term. If they don't have a long time to go, send them on a short term trip because there will be results. My third counter argument is time. People say students don't have time to go because during spring break or Christmas break, they just want to relax and hang out with friends or family. Over summer break, they're working and, again, hanging out with friends and family. But what better use of time than going and serving other people and serving God? I don't know of a better use of time. So to recap, one, it's easy. We are called to go. Young and old, everyone is called to go. But if young people can go while our hearts are soft and our hearts are still being molded, it's going to change our lives. 2, students set the example. People watch what students do. 3, our eyes are open to the world. Our eyes are open to pray for people and to not just see our tiny corner of America. And 4, Jesus becomes real because he shows up when we set apart intentional time. So parents, I encourage you to send your students to go. And students, go. It's easy. Well, it's not super easy. Get involved at your church. If they don't have a missions program, if they don't have trips set up, then set them up yourself. Because again, we are called to set the example. Students are called to set the example. When I was 16 and I went to the Philippines the first time, God gave me a dream of bringing back more teenagers. So 2 years later, I brought back more teenagers because we are called to set the example. So when it's not right in front of you, start it yourself. There's also programs like YWAM, Youth with a Mission, and Missions.me are both great programs that send youth students across the world. So thank you.